So Astroscreen is a cybersecurity startup for the information warfare age. We help brands and governments identify social media manipulation and disinformation that is targeting them or the topics that our clients care about. At Astroscreen, we combine machine learning and human intelligence because just like Andy said, artificial intelligence is nowhere near at the level where we can use just that and avoid looping in human analysts into the process. And using this process of combining machine learning and human analysts, we identify disinformation and social media manipulation wherever and whenever it occurs. So today I will tell you about how we do it, why we do it, especially as it relates to brands, explain why brands are just as vulnerable as governments or elections, and share some examples of our research, especially as it relates to the most recent Canadian elections and hostile campaigns targeting the Hong Kong protesters. Let me start by explaining briefly how we do the research that we do. So we combine machine learning, which means that we build detection methods and modules that will help us identify social media manipulation across a variety of social networks, and then have human analysts go through the detection methods that have been triggered and have them verify whether or not those alerts have been a false positive or are indeed pointing towards some level of inauthentic social or digital media activity. In the last 12 months, we've built more than 30 detection methods for Twitter, Facebook, Wikipedia, Reddit, 4chan, and Vkontakte. So we apply those detection methods to the conversations that our clients care about. So those could be elections, campaigns associated with the policy launch, or a brand's product launch. And we then see what the AI machine learning software brings out, and then have real human analysts go through those alerts and verify whether or not these are indeed signals of inauthentic social media manipulation. And so as we go through this process, we further reiterate and improve our machine learning models and have our analysts dig in deeper if it is indeed a signal of social media manipulation, and identify where it might be coming from, what effects it's having, and what is the impact of such campaigns. So we use that process to improve our tool, and eventually we will be selling this tool, software as a service. But in the meantime, we're just producing reports for our clients in both the public and the private sector. So we do the same with disinformation. We have split our offering into disinformation and social media manipulation. But it is important to appreciate that the way disinformation is being spread is changing. So we are moving away from outright falsehoods and disinformation that we may have seen in the run-up to the US presidential elections or Brexit. And what we're seeing now is that we're moving towards a highly partisan, user-generated content that is then amplified by inauthentic actors. So the content is no longer coming from abroad or outside our own echo chambers, but rather from within them, and is then being amplified by those inauthentic actors. That's why it is, at this point, counterproductive to focus too much on the content, because the behavior, the inauthentic social media behavior, is actually sending a far better signal and is a lot easier to identify than malicious content across all the countries and all the languages that we have to monitor on the daily basis. So because of the changed nature of disinformation, we are focusing on behavior and have created a number of detection methods to identify this potentially suspicious behavior. So once we confirm that the behavior is indeed suspicious, we then look at the content. So instead of starting with the content and looking at the behavior, we are looking at the behavior, and once we confirm that the behavior is suspicious, we then look at what kind of content is being amplified inauthentically. When I speak of digital manipulation and the kinds of things that you can detect using open source digital data, this is what I usually mean. So we have trolling, which is maliciously antagonizing others online. We have astroturfing, which is where our company's name comes from. That's an attempt to create an impression of a widespread grassroots reaction to an individual, a policy, an organization, or a product where little or no such sentiment actually exists. We have commercial and political bots. Those are automated social media accounts, and usually the low-hanging fruit on what we can do using machine learning. We then have sock puppet accounts, which impersonate people. We have Wikipedia edits, so that's when malicious actors are editing Wikipedia articles to game what information is displayed on the first page of Google search results, as was discussed in the first panel. We've also, we are also monitoring 4chan, and we will be monitoring Telegram and Discord soon as well to identify early coordination of these potential attacks, because that could send that early signal that would allow us to identify these malicious attacks before they go viral, start trending, and create the effects, the undesirable effects for our clients. We also look at inauthentic social media pages and groups. Those are pages and groups online that are created and run by inauthentic personas. We look at impersonation accounts and pages that are impersonating either our clients or influencers. We look at inauthentic social media ads. Those are ads coming from actors that normally wouldn't be allowed to advertise on social media without at least a disclaimer. We look at Google and YouTube search engine manipulation, which is something that's a lot more difficult to identify, so we're still trying to calibrate our models to better be able to identify it quickly. And lastly, fake reviews, which are more relevant for our commercial sector clients that are worried that the user engagement and feedback that they're getting may be inauthentic. So we use a number of detection methods to identify these different types of activities, and those detection methods are either applied at the individual account level, at a network level, or at the level of that network's activity. So we can identify even the smallest and the most early signs of any inauthentic engagement targeting a brand or a government. The challenges that we're facing is, of course, access to data. It is actually a lot easier to acquire large data sets from social media companies if you are going to use it for nefarious purposes. But if you are trying to do good and help governments and brands avoid being fooled online, it's actually really, really difficult to find quality data, and that's been one of the major concerns. The data limitations are preventing us from being operational across all platforms. Right now, we have access to all of Twitter's public data. We can monitor 4chan, Reddit, and Wikipedia, and to some extent, Facebook. In the future, we are hoping to expand into Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, and eventually do some monitoring on the dark web, although that again comes with a whole different set of challenges. So we see this expansion as crucial because the nature of modern disinformation attacks is very much cross-platform, which means that if something is happening on Twitter, it is most probably happening on Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp, and other social networks as well. So it's really important to be able to monitor as many social networks so you get that early signal as soon as you possibly can to then be able to mitigate these attacks. So as I mentioned previously, we work with both the public sector and the private sector, predominantly financial institutions and consumer-facing brands. A lot of you may not be familiar, but brands are actually extremely vulnerable to disinformation and social media manipulation, and these two phenomena have inflicted significant damage on some of these brands. I will go through a couple of examples. So does anyone know what happened to the Metro Bank in May of 2019? Interesting. So what happened was, a lot of Metro Bank customers received a WhatsApp message here on the left saying that the Metro Bank was about to go out of business. And if they wanted to save their money and preserve their valuables that they were storing at the bank, they should go to their bank as soon as possible and withdraw all of their money. Now, that has created significant queues at the bank, and as you see, journalists have covered the incident extensively and led the bank to lose 9% in their share price in less than 24 hours. So this shows you how a coordinated WhatsApp attack on a specific community across this closed social network targeting Metro Bank's consumers has led to this significant dip in the bank's stock price and eventually trust in the brand of Metro Bank. Another example is from Starbucks. So Starbucks has found itself at the center of all ongoing culture wars you can think of. It's a rather political company that is not scared to take political statements and make political statements, and as a result, they have been targeted by a lot of vicious factions online in an attempt to further undermine their business. So this is an example from 2017. When 4chan trolls launched a campaign saying that Starbucks was giving away free coffee to undocumented immigrants in the United States. So their plan was kind of ingenious. They posted a lot of ads that looked like they were coming from Starbucks itself, saying that if you are an undocumented immigrant, come to Starbucks and we'll give you a free coffee. And then call immigration enforcement to Starbucks coffee shops to get those immigrants to be arrested. Now, a lot of Starbucks customers were fooled and duped into thinking that this was a real campaign, so it both caused outrage because they were giving out this free coffee allegedly to undocumented migrants, and the people who did come to the coffee shops asking for their free coffee were also disappointed. So to mitigate this, Starbucks engaged at an individual user level. So they were sending out tweets saying this is actually not a real campaign and we're not giving out coffee to anyone. And that was kind of the end of it. Then a year later, a similar attack happened. But this time, those 4chan users were saying that if you are a person of color in the United States, you are entitled to a free coffee. This campaign started 2 days after that infamous incident where Starbucks employees asked 3 African-American men to leave the coffee shop because they were not buying anything and called the police on them. So 2 days after that, another ad campaign appears urging Americans of color to go to Starbucks and demand their free coffee as an apology for this incident. And again, it was false. But this time, Starbucks did not come out with a flat-out statement explaining that this was a false campaign. And so what happened was that the 4chan trolls came out with an apology letter apologizing over this fake campaign, saying that this campaign was led by Russian operatives. And as a result, as a way to apologize for this malicious campaign, they will give free coffee to everyone. So their secondary goal was to get everyone who sees that message to go to Starbucks and demand for a free cup of coffee and create further friction between Starbucks and their client base. So this, again, reinforces the importance of monitoring for disinformation across different social media channels for brands, because a lot of these early signals are available in the open source, and it's up to brands and private sector communicators to identify them before they hurt the company's bottom line. The final example that I'd like to show you is coming from the world of cryptocurrencies, which more than anything else is susceptible to disinformation and social media manipulation. So cryptocurrency prices fluctuate widely on a daily, hourly, minute basis. And any social media campaign can have a very strong effect on the price of the cryptocurrencies. And this is a fitting example. So John McAfee is a tech pioneer, cybersecurity visionary, and a cryptocurrency enthusiast. He posted a tweet saying that the currency of the day in January 2018 was a cryptocurrency called GVT. Now, as you can see, the tweet came from this account, which is unverified and at the time had 40 followers. Do you think it was a real account? No, it wasn't. However, it was retweeted 1,300 times, so a lot of the people who are trading in cryptocurrencies thought that this was going to be an amazing buy that will eventually turn them into millionaires. Now, the actual campaign was organized on a Telegram channel called Big Pump Signal. And what this Telegram channel does is it coordinates with other cryptocurrency buyers on disseminating disinformation and fake news about a cryptocurrency to then sell it more expensively to users who fall for this information and decide to buy it because of this false advertising coming from a fake account of someone who might know which cryptocurrencies will truly take off. So what these organizers have done, they have posted a link to the tweet saying RT this. Users in the group has 60,000 subscribers, have RT this. A lot of innocent cryptocurrency buyers fell for it, and as a result, the price of the currency grew from $30 to $45 in less than 5 minutes, and then once it was debunked, which happened within a span of 15 minutes, the currency price went back to its original $30. So people who organized the scheme managed to profit quite nicely off this campaign, and again, it shows you how vulnerable so many different factions across our societies are to this information. We work with private sector clients as well. Unfortunately, I'm not allowed to discuss those cases. However, we have done some research on the ongoing Hong Kong protests and the Canadian elections that I am allowed to share, and you can read in tomorrow's issue of Bloomberg News as well. So over the course of the last couple of months, we have been monitoring the events in Hong Kong, especially as they relate to the ongoing Chinese disinformation attacks targeting the protesters. And one thing that is extremely surprising that we found last week is that the same campaign that Twitter took down in September, which was targeting the Hong Kong protesters using fake accounts and bot accounts, is still ongoing to this day. And it is a war of attrition where new accounts are created on a daily basis that have 0 followers, have no profile images, have fake names or images stolen from other users, start amplifying anti-Hong Kong content, then are taken down only to be replaced by other anonymous users doing the exact same thing. And so this is where machine learning is really helpful. We don't have to have 5 analysts monitoring the Chinese Twitter space on a daily basis. Instead, we can have a machine learning algorithm that knows how to identify these low-quality accounts and then flags an increase or a surge in these types of accounts that are targeting a specific protest or a specific campaign. This is what, which signals the machine learning algorithm is using to make a distinction between an authentic account or an inauthentic account in this specific context. So here we see that all of these accounts have an authority, have a follower number of 0, so they are followed by virtually no one. They were all created in the last month or the last 2 months, and some of them have already been suspended. So we train our machine learning algorithms by saying, identify accounts tweeting on these hashtags that have 0 followers, have been created in the last 2 months, or have been already suspended, look at their networks, and flag any accounts that are still active that are engaging in similar campaigns. So by creating these rule-based models, our platform can return the accounts that match that description that we can then analyze using manual methods and provide reports explaining how these networks are developing, what are their objectives, where could they be coming from, and what impact they're having online. Last week, we've also done some monitoring on the Canadian elections, and because machine learning algorithms are so good at identifying patterns, we managed to identify some Facebook groups that were coordinating among each other to disseminate anti-Justin Trudeau, anti-liberal memes across 5 different quite popular Facebook pages. So the way the groups worked, they would post the exact same content within 1 to 2 minutes from one another. And because there were no apparent connections between them in the open source, we've concluded that this was a part of a coordinated campaign. And these are just 6 instances of this type of content sharing, but we found more than 50 going as far back as early October. So what they would do is they would post the exact same content, seconds, maybe 1 to 2 minutes from one another, and have this echo chamber that attracted a number of people who probably wouldn't have voted for Trudeau regardless. And this is another example of how useful machine learning algorithms can be at identifying these malicious patterns. We've also found some inauthentic Twitter accounts, all of which were using the exact same string of text, which was Andrew Scheer won't win, full stop, hashtag CDN Poly, hashtag ELXN43. So again, this shows you how helpful machine learning algorithms can be at quickly identifying these inauthentic networks that human analysts can then investigate further. To conclude, I would like to announce a very exciting thing. So for the last 2 months, we at Astroscreen have been working together with the world's biggest PR firm, Edelman, and one of London's leading law firms called Mishcon de Reya, to produce a handbook, a white paper on how both the public and the private sector, with an underscore being on the private sector, can counter disinformation, fake news, and digital media manipulation targeting them using communication strategy and legal means that are available to them. And we plan on publishing the white paper in the next month, by the end of November. And if you would like to have access to the white paper, please feel free to come and talk to me after the presentation. And if you give me your email, I'll make sure we send it to you as soon as we send it to the journalists as well. So this is something that's really exciting that we're working on. There isn't a lot of research being done on how brands have been affected, but from the research that we have done ourselves and that is being featured in the handbook, we can tell that it is definitely a major problem that's likely only going to grow in the future. So thank you so much for your attention. It was a pleasure.